I'm gonna get started. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. I'm really excited to be able to host this webinar series. Um, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Riley Peterson. I am a registered dietitian in Denver, Colorado. I own my own private practice, Balanced Life Nutrition Consulting. So I am a nutrition consultant or consultant dietitian and practice as a counselor, guiding people through lifestyle change. I try to create some content, including things like this. So I'm really excited to be able to create some free content that I hope is educational and helpful. And so that's a little bit about me. This webinar series in particular, it's called Ditching Diet Culture. This is episode 1 of a 4-part series. And I feel really passionately like this is a direction that I want to start guiding people towards. I think it's really important, and I hope that there's some takeaway at the end of my presentation today. Just for everyone's reference, this will be recorded, so if you want to go back and reference it later or share it with friends, I am happy to share that with you by email. The other thing too is this will be a 25-ish, 30-minute presentation, and then I will host like a Q&A session at the end. So I will keep you all muted for now, but if anything comes up at the end, just keep it in the back of your mind, because at the very end, we'll have some time for discussion, questions, and whatnot. Okay, so with that being said, I will go ahead and get started. So I hope, in this webinar series, I really hope to bring some attention to diet culture and dieting. I really wanted to start here because I'm hoping this topic will be a valuable foundation for individuals to kind of go from. I hope it gives a little bit more insight about who I am as a dietitian, my own philosophy, and then we'll hopefully provide some tools and context in building healthy lifestyles that are enjoyable and sustainable. So let's get started digging a little bit deeper into this topic. Oops. Here we go. Sorry about that. So in my webinar episode, my objectives are as follows. First, I would like to differentiate between diet and dieting because they're very different. I want to explain the effect of dieting on the body and its metabolism. I want to outline the idea of a yo-yo diet and how this may exert some negative effects on metabolism and the way we function. I'd also like to suggest some of the possible negative mindsets that diet culture encourages. And last, I want to provide some background for the solutions to this problem that I'm seeing and I'm observing in our culture. So, like I said, I first want to start off by just making some clarifications and defining some things, because I think it's really important to distinguish between diet, like your diet, and a diet. So, like for example, I'm a dietitian. Diet is in the name, but I don't necessarily always promote dieting. I think that when I'm talking about diet, I'm talking about all of the food that makes up your intake on any given day. You know, whether it's the perceived healthiest thing you eat or the perceived unhealthiest thing you eat. And it's kind of just what you eat. So on the other hand, when I'm talking about like a diet or dieting, I'm talking about a subscription to some specified structure of eating, usually followed a prescribed plan for some designated amount of time. So like keto is a diet, paleo is a diet, Atkins, low carb, Whole30, gluten-free, FODMAP, all diets. And not all diets are created equal. And just to clarify, some of these diets do have a time and place, but I will get to that later. So I would like to move into the structure and mindsets that we associate with dieting. So I think probably most of us have all been there at some point where we're thinking, oh my God, I've been so bad, or I could really lose a few pounds, or I'm feeling really tired, I'm not sleeping well, something encouraging you to make some sort of change in your life. Making change can be a really daunting task. And then comes along diet culture. And diet culture is this multi-billion-dollar industry that really pinpoints and markets directly towards the challenges that come up when trying to make lifestyle change. So you might see these shocking photos, like the before and after. I lost 20 pounds in a month. I lost 60 pounds in a month, whatever you hear. You might hear like these red flag phrases, such as quick and easy, easy fix, it'll melt the fat away, it'll melt the weight away. Diet culture often promotes a quick and easy fix, but I really want to explain and dig deeper into why that quick and easy fix can be more damaging than helpful. And, at the end of the day, this industry is in it to make money. They're making money off of this culture. The diet and weight loss industry is a $72 billion annual industry. And, but kind of fun fact is that body positivity and, this kind of approach that I'm taking is starting to catch on. And that industry amount has been steadily declining in the recent years. I thought that was interesting. So this is kind of a little disclaimer, and it has to be said bluntly, but it needs to be said. So healthy and sustainable lifestyle change is never quick and easy, no matter how much diet culture wants to tell you it's going to be. Whether your goal is getting off a medication, weight loss, improved energy, improved sleep, it's not quick. And it's not easy, but I'll get into that in a second. Unfortunately, I wish it was, but it's just not. You may start to see results or change based off of some of the efforts you're making in that first week, in that first month. I have clients who lose weight in the first couple of weeks or months, or feel, and more energized, or have certain outcomes. But ultimately, building up those sustainable habits that support that long term take time and consistency. And the other thing, when coming back to the easy part, I say it's not easy. Well, I also want to challenge you to think about easy differently. In shifting your mindset away from diet culture, I propose that you're able to make life easier, less restrictive, happier, more comfortable. It takes practice and it takes time, but ultimately, this is more of a solution than what diet culture is trying to sell. So the primary problem with dieting is this promotion of quick and easy. And I want to go into why these models are actually able to produce quick and easy results. So when I talk about weight loss, for fake weight loss, I want to just say weight loss from calorie restriction, carb restriction, any of these kind of prescribed diets, they produce what I dare to say is fake weight loss sometimes. And why do I say fake? The first thing that usually happens when you make significant dietary change is going to be water loss. So we have a lot of, the way our bodies work, water is really easily shed, or retained. Carbohydrates are water loving. They love to hold on to water. And when you cut carbs, you retain less water. When you cut calories, your body uses up all the stored carbohydrate you have in your muscles and in your liver. That's called glycogen. And when you start to use that up, again, water follows. You release water, lose some weight. For any of those high protein diets, protein is also involved in water loss. So basically the way it happens is the more protein you intake, the more your body has to work to process it. It goes to your kidneys, and your body excretes more water as a result. Ultimately, all that to say, water goes quick. It's very easily shed. Even on any given day, you can fluctuate plus or minus 5 pounds. I'm sure at some point we've stepped on the scale and seen, 5 pounds of extra weight and kind of being like, oh, what happened? Nothing's changed. I haven't eaten less. I haven't exercised more or less. Why am I 5 pounds heavier? Yeah, that's water. That can be water. And also when you start to adhere to a stricter diet where you're cutting calories, carbs, whatever you're doing, a lot of times in those first weeks and months, a lot of that weight loss is attributed to water loss, which is not true weight loss. So what happens next is commonly contributes to what I would call the yo-yo dieting cycle. So as you can kind of tell from the name, yo-yo, you go up, you go down. It's a cycle of dieting, losing weight, stopping the diet, gaining the weight back, and then starting all over again. It's a yo-yo diet cycle. Now, a lot of people, this is acceptable. To a lot of people, this may be acceptable. You know, they're okay going on a prescribed diet for a certain amount of time to lose weight, knowing that it could come back when the diet stops, but knowing that they can do it again. And I have to suggest that there's a lot of things that are going on unseen that aren't quite reflected in the way you see yourself in the mirror or on the scale. So aside from water, the easiest thing for your body to let go of is going to be muscle. When not paired with exercise or not sustained slowly over time, weight loss can also come from muscle loss. So I kind of want to propose a scenario. So something triggers someone to start a diet. Whether it's the beginning of the new year and you want to make lifestyle change, or you've put on a couple extra pounds, or you're feeling sluggish, or your clothes aren't fitting so well, whatever that may be, you begin a diet. You are doing really well. Maybe in the first few weeks, you lose some weight. You're doing well. In the next couple of weeks, you continue to lose weight. Things are going well. You're feeling good about it. Well, like I said previously, water and muscle are usually the first to go. They're easier to burn off than fat is. So you're going through this diet. You are losing weight. Most likely muscle and water, maybe a little fat, depending on how you're exercising and what foods you're eating, but essentially you're losing weight. And then just a little side note, I want to kind of differentiate between like muscle and fat loss, because that's going to be important in the next set of the cycle. Muscle and fat are both metabolically active tissue, meaning that they both play a part in the buildup and breakdown of your body's day-to-day function. Muscle, however, is much more metabolically active in comparison to fat. So if you think about it, you know, me talking to you right now, sitting up, my posture, smiling, moving my arms as I type, you're all using your muscles to control those movements. So muscles are going to burn a lot more calories at rest in comparison to fat. So just kind of keep that in mind later. It's more metabolically active than fat. So you begin the diet. You are losing weight. Just keeping on with this scenario. Maybe this individual doesn't really exercise at baseline. The diet that they're following doesn't really include any physical activity either. It's just a diet. You know, if they're experiencing good success, they're feeling great, they hit, let's say, a 20-pound weight loss goal after a couple months, and they're feeling awesome. They've finished the diet. So after they start to discontinue the diet, maybe they have the intention of maybe still keeping some of the habits, but not quite being as strict as they were while they were prescribing to the diet. You fall off. You get back a little bit closer to normal than you were before. Well, over 6 months, it's easier for some of those less restrictive habits to kind of creep back in. And in this scenario, this individual kind of goes back to their original baseline habits. They're eating a certain way, causes them to gain some weight back. Maybe not all the weight, but some of the weight at least. And they start all over again. They, oh, okay, well, I've gained the weight back. I need to diet again. And so we repeat. Slowly, you know, the weights come back, the individual is frustrated, they start the diet again. But what's happening to the body metabolically as this happens? The scale is reflecting weight loss and weight gain, but what's happening at a deeper level? Essentially, each time the cycle occurs, the individual is probably losing some water initially, maybe a little bit of fat, and then some muscle, which with each regain, the weight is most likely coming back in fat. Your body likes to store fat. It's how, you know, you sustain yourself and keep yourself protected. So fat's really easy to gain back. hard to lose, but easy to gain back. So each cycle, this metabolically active tissue, the muscle, is being replaced with less metabolically active tissue, making it harder to burn calories at rest, making it harder to burn off. So every time the cycle occurs, you're raising the threshold a little bit higher, losing some of that good metabolically active tissue, and then replacing it with the less so, the fat. Fat has its purpose, it's good for us, but it just, in the purpose of weight loss, it is challenging. It does become a more challenging every time the cycle goes through. Now, just quick disclaimer, because I'm making a huge assumption here. I'm assuming that people are dieting because they want to lose weight. And I'm just using this as a reference because it's the most common trend I see among clients. It's the most common trend I see on the internet and through social media interactions. And it's also a huge cornerstone of diet culture in general. Of course, there are so many other outcomes that individuals may be looking for when starting a diet or making lifestyle changes. And all those reasons are valid. They're all valid. Why ever you decide you want to make a change, I want to acknowledge and validate that. But I want to get into those reasons and strategies and differentiations between those reasons in some of my next episodes. So those will be a little bit farther down the line. But getting back to the damaging nature of diet culture and why I like to discourage it is less so the metabolic reasons why it's damaging, and moving now towards the mindsets, as to the damaging mindsets this culture creates. And so the first thing that I want to just address is that this culture really has a very biased, a weight biased perception. So, I mean, I'm sure we've heard many of these things before, like, oh my goodness, you look so great. Have you lost weight? Or, oh my gosh, you look so good. You're so skinny. You hear these things a lot and they sound like compliments, but they're kind of backhanded compliments, especially if someone else hears it and thinks, well, I don't look like that person. How do I look? We label foods as good or bad. We always assume, or we equate weight status and health status as the same thing when it's just not the case. We see before and after pics with, one obviously not being the less desired and one being more desired. And then there's so much negative body and self-talk that's associated around diet culture. So it creates this damaging mindset. And it really encourages that you must lose weight in order to feel good or in order to look good. And that's just not the case. I know I can't tell you right off the bat that you need to feel good about your size and have, and your shape and have this expectation that you're just going to change your mindset right away. I more say this to emphasize the biases that we see in our culture around shape and size. You are all beautiful in your own skin and there's no right size. We all need to hear that. The biggest takeaway that I want you to get from this webinar series is just that health and well-being goals are very different from aesthetic goals. They're not the same thing. They do overlap at many points, and definitely there is benefit to looking and feeling your best, but I just want to stress that they're not synonymous all the time. The diet culture mindset that you must restrict or eat a certain way in order to look a certain way is just not realistic. And it's more damaging, I think, than helpful. And it's so much easier said than done to start introducing this mindset in. It's really hard. I struggle with it myself. But throughout this webinar series, I would really like to introduce more strategies around removing weight bias and kind of shifting this mindset. So there are 3 really dangerous kind of sub-mindsets, in my opinion, that can result from subscribing to this culture. So we've got restriction, guilt, and rigidity. So inherently, restriction is going to cause this rubber band effect. So you think about it like the harder you pull back, the farther you pull back and let go, the harder and more painful that snap is going to be. I'm sure we've all experienced it before. Like I've experienced it before. I remember one time when I was in high school, I did a cleanse where I did 2 liquid meals a day and a solid clean meal where I basically boiled chicken, rice, and vegetables for 3 weeks. And throughout those 3 weeks, all I could think about was not even eating unhealthy foods, but just eating solid food. Like I just wanted to eat everything. And I obsessed over it and I thought about it all the time. And I didn't go a day without thinking about it, feeling hungry and icky. The day I finally ended this diet, I binged on just about every single food that I wanted and obsessed over in those 3 weeks, and there's also the argument to be made that diets are really designed this way. Aside from some of the more like lifestyle like diets such as keto, or gluten-free if you are celiac or gluten sensitive, maybe paleo, these diets are still restrictive in some ways, but maybe people are on them for certain reasons, easy to follow, less difficult to follow long term. But there are a lot of programs and diets out there that are set up within a defined time frame, a 1 month cleanse, Whole30 30 days, a 3 month wellness program. They're all set up within a time frame because no one's going to be able to maintain that restrictedness for that long. So I bet you're probably thinking, like, what about a jump start? Sure, I can't do this forever, but what if I just do something a little bit stricter to start off and I'll jumpstart myself into being healthy again? Now to that, I say, 1, just remember that yo-yo diet cycle. When you subscribe to that mindset, you're putting yourself at risk of the unseen damage that you can do to your metabolic regulation, your hunger and fullness hormones, your regulation of all the things that your body's supposed to do to keep you balanced. And then 2, guilt. I'd like you to just like think about it, or raise your hand. I can't see you, but raise your hand if you've ever felt guilty about eating a bad food or for eating too much. Now, I'd like you to think about why you felt bad about eating it. And I'm thinking about it too. I'm personally thinking about another diet I did back in high school where I was following a strict paleo diet, and it took me years to stop feeling guilty or bad or shameful when eating pasta or bread, carbohydrates in general, because I was under the impression they were not allowed in a healthy diet. Paleo was healthy, grains were not. But now I urge you thought about it for a second, to flip the coin. How was that bad food actually good for you in some way? Did it make you feel good? Were you enjoying an indulgent dinner night or round of cocktails with friends? Did that comforting snack get you through a challenging, difficult moment? Or was it just a healthy food that was demonized by some diet culture? So I'm thinking about, even though brown rice is a totally healthy food, I was afraid of eating rice for years because of paleo. A lot of those carb restricted diets demonize carbs when in fact we need them in our diet. Foods are so rarely black and white, and there's really room for any type of food in a healthy diet in moderation. And you do not deserve to feel any guilt or shame or negative feelings around food or eating. We all deserve so much better than that. Another pitfall of this diet culture is just rigidity. The idea that it is all or it is nothing. Healthy or unhealthy, black, white, and the days when you decide not to follow that healthy diet, you're cheating. It's bad. It's not good. This lack of flexibility just doesn't promote sustainability. That lack of flexibility just doesn't promote long-term change. And then that rigidity, that lack of forgiveness is also feeding back into guilt and negativity that I discussed in previous slides. And ultimately, I want to promote long-term health and success. Flexibility and contentment are really essential here and are really essential for the promotion of sustainable change. But on the other hand, I have to acknowledge that however you or the person down the street or your grandma wants to make dietary or lifestyle change is very valid. Some people are better suited for that restricted lifestyle, and I can't tell them, no, don't do that. What I can do is I can challenge them, you as in the collective you, to challenge the reasons why you're doing it, why you think the restriction is necessary, the why behind it. I really, really want to get down to that because I think it's a really important, one of the important questions you can ask yourself when you're going down that path. You know, if dieting works for you, I support it, but I urge you to ask yourself these questions before you're adamant about choosing a diet. So one, is it sustainable? Can you do it forever and be totally fine with it? Two, do you feel guilty when you aren't practicing the diet? And then last, does this diet, not the perceived outcomes of the diet, like weight loss or body composition change, but the actual diet itself, make you feel happy or fulfilled? Are you happy eating the foods you're eating? Do you feel content, or do you feel like you're missing out? Or do you feel frustrated or overwhelmed? Those are the questions that I urge you to think back to when you're going down a certain mindset. So I have gone through a lot of information tonight. It's just this kind of the surface level of what all goes into this really complex culture and issue. You know, I really I have a lot more information to share in the next few weeks. I'm going to dive deeper into, you know, what an alternative mindset could be. That's what I'll go into next week. Food freedom is what I call it, or non-diet diet. I want to also give you some strategies and implementing this kind of new mindset. I'm not going to say it's easy, but like I said in the beginning of this presentation, it's all a practice. And so strategies for practicing that mindset. And so you can say goodbye to that guilt, that restriction, that rigidity. I don't want that in anyone's life. So I'm going to give you guys some strategies for that. That'll be not next week, but the week following. And then in my last episode, I'm going to talk a lot more about, you know, weight bias, what is commonly known as like health at every size, and just general kind of like body positivity themes, because I think that's also really important for this, is shifting the mindset around how we see ourselves as beautiful and valuable. And I really appreciate you guys all joining. I have everybody's email, so I'm going to send you all a registration link for next week's episode. If you liked today's episode, I would love it if you would join me again, and I will definitely get that sent out to you guys. So, but before I completely wrap up today's episode, I would love to hear if you have any questions, because it's definitely not the easiest mindset to wrap your head around right off the bat. I'd love to hear your questions, comments, concerns. If you want to challenge me on something I said, I'm also open to hearing that. So now we can move into the Q&A session of the webinar. I'm going to You can either ask me a question on the Q&A button, or I can also unmute you all. So feel free to share if you'd like. And if nothing else comes up, I'm really thankful for you guys joining me today, and hopefully I'll see you next week. But if you do please feel free to stay on. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to end the webinar. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. It was great.
Oh, thanks, Lynn.
And look forward to more.
Oh, great. I'm excited.
Okay.
All right. Bye. Have a good night.
Bye.